Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, manager did not want to help me and was fired. The second story, the best way to get back at bad management is to create a mass walkout. The third story, I fired the manager and took her job. Today's first story is, blackmail me into not reporting an incident to the police after rejecting you? Prepare to lose your job. When I was 19, I worked in a one-man store in my local area. Sure, there were a lot of entitled people that came in, but there was also absolutely lovely regulars that I bonded with. Unfortunately, what happened didn't involve one of the nice regulars, but a creepy older man. The man was probably in his 40s, dirty, and just an outright creep. The shop didn't have any panic buttons, so when he came in, I was on my own. He was a pervert who would just come in to harass me. He would lean over the counter to stroke my arms, make disgusting derogatory comments towards me, and try to feel me up anytime I left the counter. I hated working there because of this guy. I reported him to the manager multiple times, but nothing was ever done. I even showed him the CCTV, but again, nothing would happen. One day, the man came in saying to me extremely sexual things. I just snapped. I shoved him away from me, telling him to get out of the store, and that if he didn't stop, I would report him to the police. The guy laughed at me and said there was nothing I could do until I pointed at the cameras. This enraged the guy, and he told me how he knew I lived in the area, so if he finds me, I'd end up in a hospital because of the things he would do. He left, but I was absolutely terrified. I knew this guy was ex-military, and he could easily overpower me. After this, he came in the store and followed me when I visited local stores. On a shift swap, I nervously came into my work as the manager was cashing his till. He saw me and asked what was wrong, and I told him what was happening. I said how I need to report this guy to the police, but needed evidence, so I mentioned the CCTV. My manager responded, "I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid you can't do that. If you do, then they'll do a background check on you, and I'll have to tell them everything I know about you." This terrified me even more. The manager was a friend of mine, and the reason I got that job to begin with. He knew that I had home problems, so he was basically telling me that he would tell the police about it and rip my family apart. He added, "See, I value you as a friend, but after seeing your true colors when you refused to go out with me, kinda tells me to be honest to the police. Do you really want to involve them?" It became evident that the reason he never handled the complaints before is because I rejected him. He asked me out a few times, which I rejected but didn't think much of it. Sadly, this got to me, and I never reported what happened. As scared as I was, I didn't want my family to be destroyed, and wasn't going to go out with him just to get the evidence I needed. Instead, I started to plot my revenge against the manager. The area manager and my manager were good friends. He let him off with everything during inspections, but rumor had it that the area manager was moving to a different location, meaning that a new one would come in and do an inspection. Knowing this, I patiently waited to see if this was true. One day I went in and saw a man I had never seen before. It was the new area manager, and he was in doing an inspection while the manager wasn't there. Turned out he met the manager before and didn't like him one bit, so he was trying to find something to fire him. He told me that he wanted to monitor the things I would do day to day in the shop, and so I did, badly. I made sure to F up every chance I got, not scanning items, not checking everyone's IDs, stalking things wrong, etc. The area manager was horrified and asked me if I was ever trained. I told him the truth, I wasn't, but he brought up my files saying I signed to say I did receive training. Luckily, my dad always encouraged me to keep a log of everything I do at work, so I gave him the week I started and the day I signed it, telling him that he just got me to sign it, he can check the cameras, which of course he did. As a result, he sat me down and asked what other things my manager did that he wasn't aware of. I told him everything, that he makes me and my coworker take over his shifts to leave early, how he never fulfilled requests for holidays and took them away last minute, and more, including how he never processed official complaints and would persuade us not to report incidents. He asked what kind of incidents, and I told him about the customer and how he blackmailed me not to report it to the police, saying how the only way he was going to help me was if I dated him. The area manager was disgusted and asked if I had all the relevant dates to prove what I was saying. I handed him my logbook and said that I felt awful telling him all this, as I didn't want anyone to get in trouble. That was a lie. Of course I wanted results. The area manager reassured me that nothing was going to happen to me, as this was all on the manager. I didn't hear much of it until eventually my manager never came into work, and a new guy was there. I asked where the manager was, and was told he got fired. Turned out he had a hearing that he thought was just about how he managed the store, when it was actually a lot more serious than that. He wasn't just pulled up on what happened with me, but it was revealed he was falsifying paperwork and falsifying his hours. He was stealing money from the store, so he was subsequently fired for falsifying documents, mistreating staff, abusing his power, and stealing. The latter he was getting taken to court for. The area manager used everything I said against him. I quit a little after this, but have a great relationship with the new manager. He's a kind, professional man. I also moved and never saw the customer again. I checked social media, and my old manager had blocked me on everything. I haven't heard from him personally since, but heard that he claims I'm lying and that I was a spiteful bee. At least he wasn't entirely wrong. I am a spiteful bee. I was still afraid of the customer throughout this. Had to look over my shoulder everywhere I went. It got to the point I stopped going out myself, only going out with my brothers or a large group. I moved and quit because I couldn't live like that. CCTV was kept for 7 months at the time on the company system. Not sure if it's changed now, but if you had a date and time, you could find it on the system no problems. The next story is the tale of the mistreated staff and their revenge. This story comes from a friend of mine. First, a little background. This takes place at a pizza place in a small town. My friend is female, which is important to this tale, and to understand what happened. This pizza place was not a mom and pop place. It was owned by a guy 2 towns over, and therefore was managed at arm's length. So now that you understand this, on to the story. This story begins 8 years ago during those times I was desperate for work. In a small town like this, there's slim pickings. So I was pretty happy when a friend told me how a delivery driver and a cook got fired. This leaves it open for me to jump in and fill in one of those spots. So I go down, fill in the application, get called in for an interview. The GM for this place was a younger blonde-haired kid, unusually young for such a position, but I didn't think anything of it. Note that this kid had to be 19 minimum. The interview doesn't go well though. The first thing that I noticed is that he seemed impatient. I found out he had another interviewee waiting already. This one sitting 2 tables over, and was a cute young girl who looked 16 or so. After rambling a bunch of non-job relevant questions, he bid me farewell. I didn't know what happened, it went by so quick. I found out later through my friend that the GM hired the cute girl on the spot. The interview only took 2 minutes. I was annoyed, but since I didn't work there, I didn't think anything further on it and continued my job search. I found out a week later that both positions had been filled, both by younger girls. I learned this because my friend started ranting about things. She told me that the GM started to go easy on the cute girls and started to sabotage any of the less cute ones. My friend was among the cute ones, so she started feeling creeped out when the favoritism started turning into flirtation. He would purposefully undertrain the new girls in certain things, so he had an excuse to help any chance he got. After 3 of the older girls got fired, all under questionable reasons, then replaced, they all started talking. Even the new staff didn't like the way he treated them, so they decided to plan. My friend told me to keep an eye on the place during Memorial Day weekend. Every year, like a lot of places in town, everyone had special deals or attractions. Sure enough, on the first day of their special Memorial Day weekend event, all the girls showed up. In theatrical fashion, they lined up at the front counter, all in front of customers, mind you. Took off their hats and aprons and tossed them onto the ground. My friend said they actually planned this out. They then yelled in unison, "We don't work for pigs," and walked. It was glorious. I found out later after he tried to do everything he could. He tried to make and serve the food on his own and made as many calls as he could to the girls. Each one gave him the big NO. In the end, he had to admit defeat and call the owner. I'm not sure about what happened to him after that though. I can imagine that he was fired. In such a small town, word of the event spread like fire. There was also a rumor that the owner paid the paper to not post his story, but I don't know if that's true. All I know is that a month later things were back up and running, with a new GM and a new well-rounded staff roster. The moral of the story is that the best way to get back at bad management is to create a mass walkout. Something they never see coming, and for those bad managers out there, your workers are people too, and they'll get you back if you push them. And the last story is, senior manager gets me fired. I turn things around and get her job and salary, plus see her break down, and then let her know exactly how I got my revenge. I was hired by a company as an assistant manager, a job I was well qualified for. The owner is rarely on site as he owns several businesses. The company is run by a GM who hired me, but who works mostly second shift, and who I therefore would have little daily contact with since I was hired for first shift. I was assigned to Eva for training. Eva was a manager and had been with the company for 5 years. I trained with her for a few days, and then I was on my own, though she and I had overlapping shifts and would see each other a few days a week. We were friendly but not close. After a few months, I was doing well at my job and had even gotten some new procedures adopted to help boost sales. Eva began to act resentful. She would correct me for small things and took any opportunity to remind me that she had trained me. It didn't matter to me. She wasn't my boss. I reported to the GM, so I mostly just ignored her. What I didn't know was that Eva was not just tight with the GM, but they had worked together at another place for 10 years before this one. One day at shift end, GM asks to talk, tells me it's not working out, says I'm still making mistakes at 6 months that I shouldn't be. I ask for examples. A few of them were petty matters Eva had mentioned, but most of them were just not true. I tried to argue, but it was clear that I was set up. I decided to reach out to the owner since I had nothing to lose. He was sympathetic, but said he relies on GM to run the business and had to support her decision. Then he mentioned that if things hadn't been so bad between me and Eva, it probably could have been worked out. That's when I knew she was behind me getting fired from a job I needed, really liked and was making great money, and I vowed to get revenge. I started searching her online info. In less than an hour, I had uncovered gold, thanks to one of those pay services. About 3 months prior, Eva was arrested and charged with DWI in a neighboring state. The court records showed she had a hearing coming up in a few weeks. That was enough to get her fired. It affects a professional license she and I had to have as management. Per state law, license holders must report criminal charges to the licensing board, and in the case of a DWI arrest, licenses are typically suspended pending trial. I called the owner and told him what I discovered. It was news to him. I guess since it was out of state, Eva was keeping it secret. Maybe she was hoping to get let off the charges. The next day, the owner called and said Eva was fired. He thanked me for telling him about her DWI, apologized for how I was fired, and offered me Eva's position and salary. He asked me to come in the next morning to meet with him and to cover Eva's shift. I accepted. That alone was sweetly satisfying revenge, but what happened next was the icing on the cake. I got to work extra early, met with the owner and GM, and we all agreed to start fresh. Cool. It was still an hour before opening, and I was in the back of the place when I heard the front door chime. When I came out a few minutes later, Eva was there, tears flowing, begging the owner for her job back. She obviously didn't know I was there, because when she saw me, her whole body seized, and her shocked expression was priceless. I walked right by her, staring her down with an SH grin, and went outside. Eva came out a minute later and wouldn't make eye contact. As she walked away, I said, "Good luck on the 23rd. That was her court date. I hope you love these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out.